Median home prices in York Region just jumped 3.4% from last month, now sitting at $1.2 million. But here's what most buyers are not realizing is that 71% of homes sold in May actually sold below asking price. My name is Alice Prince. I am a real estate broker here in York Region, and I am super passionate about sharing the nuances and details and everything that is actually happening in our real estate market and what you should be paying attention to if you are thinking about buying or selling today. So when you watch most of these market update videos, people tend to really zero in on the year-over-year price changes. And don't get me wrong, that is definitely one piece of the puzzle, but it doesn't really tell the entire story. Obviously, things like the economy, the stock market, and rise in unemployment all have a major impact on how buyers and sellers behave. And it's all connected, and if we were to ignore that, we would be missing a huge part of what's really driving our marketplace. Okay, so quickly, just touching base on last May median prices, they're only down about less than 1%. And the big number here, and what's going to look kind of scary, is that sales volume is down almost 17%, and new listings, so the amount of homes that came on in the month of May onto the market, is up almost 25%. Days on market has also increased, taking homes on average 33% longer to sell than last year. And keep in mind, this is an average number for all of York Region. Each area and housing type is going to look a little bit different. Last year, we've seen over 1,100 sellers take their homes off the market, and that number now has increased by 58%. Likely, we will see those homes return in the fall months, since now we're heading into summer and families usually have plans because kids are out of school. Something I mentioned in my last video is that the market isn't dead, but it is very different. Not long ago, the real estate cycle flowed pretty smoothly. Buyers and sellers were feeling very confident. Sellers knew that they could buy their next home without too much stress because their current place would likely sell quickly and for a good price. There was a level of trust in the process that kept things moving, but now everything has shifted. Most home sellers feel like they need to sell before they buy, and that's kind of slowing everything down right now. It's one of the big reasons we're seeing more listings come onto the market than actual sales happen, because there's a hesitation in the air. The only way this pace picks up is if sellers start taking bigger risks, which let's be real here, it's unlikely with all the certainty around interest rates, job security, and the broader economy. The other possibility would be that some sellers pull their homes off the market entirely, reducing inventory, and that could start putting upward pressure on the market again. But what is fascinating, I will admit, is that although despite all of this, median prices are actually holding pretty steady. Now, you're likely going to hear the occasional story of a buyer scoring an amazing deal or a seller who had to negotiate more than expected, and both of those are true, but those stories don't define the entire market. The bigger picture is that prices overall have remained surprisingly resilient. Last year, we were dealing with a completely different set of circumstances. Today, there's global tension impacting buyer psychology, and our unemployment numbers are climbing, which is making people hit that pause button more and more on their plans. So of course, when we hear that sales are down about 17% year over year, it does sound dramatic, but in reality, sales have been slowly increasing month over month, just at a very more cautious, steady level, I would say. Now let's break down what's actually happening in York Region on a month-per-month basis. Now, median home prices, as I mentioned, are up 3.4% from April, sitting at $1.2 million. Sales in May was up almost 10% month over month, with 999 buyers making a purchase. And I know that number sounds a little bit small, and it is obviously compared to what we've seen in recent markets. However, it's been steadily and slowly climbing since the beginning of the year. But here's the big shift. 4,128 new listings hit the market in the month of May, and that's an increase of 20% from April, giving buyers more shopping options in York Region. This is something that I found interesting. Out of all the sales in York Region, only 2.2% of the homes sold at asking price, about 26.7% sold over asking, but the vast majority sold 71% below list price. Now, York Region as a whole is sitting at 6.36 months of inventory. So basically that means with all the current active listings on the market, 1 out of 6 homes are currently selling. Another way to look at this is that it would take about 6 months for all the active buyers that are currently in the marketplace right now to wipe out all the inventory, which fundamentally puts us in a buyer's market. Now, another interesting stat is that majority of the listings currently on the market are listed between 1 million and 1.5 million, and that's also where we have seen majority of the sales have happened. So if your home falls between these price points, you have a lot more competition, so it's super important to hit the nail on the head with pricing, presentation, and exposure. You really need to be fighting for attention right now. Almost 60% of the sales that happened in New York region were in the detached sector. The condo apartments accounted for about just under 16%, townhouses accounted for just over 13%, and semi-detaches was just under 8%. So the tricky part right now is that as more sellers are starting to think about making a move, and most of them do need to sell first before they buy, inventory just keeps piling and piling up. It's kind of like a traffic jam. If the number of sales could keep up with the number of new listings hitting the market each month, we'd be having a totally different conversation right now because the market cycle would feel a lot more balanced. But it's kind of like clustered right now, and that actually proves something that I've been saying. Sellers aren't able to sell because that next buyer is also someone who needs to sell their home first. It's like this domino effect is happening and it's just not budging. And on top of all that, let's be honest, at these price points, especially in the $1 million plus range, we're not seeing first-time home buyers jump in to keep things moving. So without that fresh wave of entry-level demand, the cycle remains stuck. Sellers are currently getting about 97.5% of their asking price on average, meaning buyers are negotiating about 2.5% off the asking price. So to put that into real terms and to perspective, if a home is listed at, let's say, $1 million, a 2.5% price adjustment means a buyer might save $25,000, which works out to be about $115 to $120 off their monthly mortgage payment. So before I do wrap things up here, what I really want you to take away from all of this is that we are in uncharted territory, right? Yes, interest rates are lower than they were, and that would normally spark more activity in the marketplace, but clearly based on the numbers and the sales that we've been seeing, that hasn't happened, at least not in a big way or a way that we have hoped for. Instead, what we're seeing is more homes hitting the market, more competition amongst sellers, and a little bit of hesitation from buyers who are trying to make sense of what their next move is going to be. Now, when it comes to prices, no, we're not in the same position or market as we were last year, but this market hasn't collapsed either. What we're experiencing really right now is a slow adjustment to things, and it's important to remember that not all housing types are behaving the same way. The condo market, for example, may feel a little bit different than obviously what's happening in the detached segment. As someone who studies the data like day in and day out, overall real estate has really shown and it has proven its resiliency. If you've bought your home a few years ago, chances are you're still sitting on a good amount of equity. And I know that, there are some sellers out there that are still wishing that they could get those 2021 or early 2022 prices, but the truth is, even if you go back 5 years in York region, prices are up about 36%. Now, if you're a buyer, especially a first-time home buyer, and you're hoping to find a great deal, you have to stay active in the market. And what I mean by that is staying engaged in the market by actually going and seeing homes in person. You have to be able to feel and touch what is going on in the market to get a true grasp of where things are at. Because the truth is, there are deals out there, but they won't always come easily. And it may take a few tries, and most sellers are not in a position to take these huge losses on their home. They're willing to sell, of course, but only if the numbers make sense for them to allow to obviously go on to their next goal. And if you're someone who's curious about how these numbers apply to your specific situation, never hesitate to reach out. Whether you're looking to buy, sell, or you just kind of want to understand what's really going on in your area or in the area that you're potentially moving to, never hesitate to use the Calendly link in the description below to book a time that is convenient for you. And if you found this video helpful, don't forget to subscribe and hit the bell. I break down the GTA New York region market stats every single month to keep you informed. Ciao for now. Bye.